Welcome back, everyone. This is another episode of the Africa Pivot. And today we are going to be talking about the coup in Benin. We are currently in the midst of it. It's happening right this second. Some announcements came out yesterday, or maybe the day before yesterday, I'm not sure, but at least yesterday is when I saw it, about a attempted coup in Benin. But now there's information saying that the coup was unsuccessful. But apparently there is still activity happening in Benin right now. I'm watching tweets like live, and people are still saying they're still hearing gunshots, they're still hearing helicopters, planes, and things like that. But it has been announced at least that the coup was unsuccessful. Did you see information about that? What did you think?
Yeah, I saw it, I think this early morning on our side, saying that there was an attempted coup, but as you were saying, the new information that's coming out is that it was blocked, didn't go through successfully. But as you said, there's still a lot of things happening on the ground as far as what's happening in Benin. So just keeping our ears to the ground, see what happens.
There is like a group of diasporans who are in the process of getting like citizenship in Benin.
Yeah,
And Benin, recently invited Spike Lee and his wife and Sierra
yep,
to kind of like be the ambassadors for Benin and to, inspire other Black Americans to come to Benin for citizenship purposes, relocation, and all of that.
yep.
And so, yeah, the message just pretty much is telling people like, stay safe if you can, remain indoors. But yeah, what do you think about that?
I mean, it's one of those things where I think was it Mali that last month that there was a coup there. So it's one of those like domino effects where we're seeing a lot of coups happen in the African region, especially the West African region or the Sahel region actually, where military is taking over governments, and it's kind of sending this message that democracy is not as safe, which is bad. But then again, there's this also kind of argument that, well, the leaders in these African countries are not doing what they should do as far as letting democracy reign. And now all this is happening. So it's interesting to see this thing happen before the end of the year. And I think the hope is, well, we're hoping that we don't see another one happening because we're seeing some other news. I think it was another African country about ISIS or,
Madagascar.
yeah, Madagascar. Yeah, we've seen all that. So a little fragmentation of democracy in the African region. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Western world reacts or what they say because they're going to see everything about this more from a negative light. But yeah, it's uncertainty right now. So everybody's kind of hoping that things will go well, and when we go into 2026, it's more positive than negative.
No, yeah, for sure. I mean, especially because this is December. This is like, it's not just Ghana and Nigeria, but people usually travel all throughout West Africa during this time, particularly like those specific national diasporas. So, yeah, I mean, I saw that yesterday and I was kind of surprised
Mhm.
because I don't really hear a lot of negative things about President Talon.
Yeah,
Um, but that's also could be because I don't speak French. But I haven't like he wasn't on the radar at
yeah.
least for all of these conversations about
Um,
the president. But I wonder if this. I just wonder what we'll find out. Who the coup was backed by, because we know like Togo is right next door. They've been going through it
yeah, their
with
president as
their
well.
president and as well as Cameroon. So it's kind of like, from Ghana to Togo, Benin, Burkina Faso and Cameroon, there is a lot going on.
It's really bad because we have a whole African Union, ECOWAS group, and now we're seeing all these things happen. So the question now is, are these, this union we have, is it actually doing anything to stabilize the region, or is it just not, it's ineffective? Are we more fragmented than we think we are? Is democracy not as good as for the African region as we thought it was going to be? Because we keep seeing coups happening almost every month, almost every year. So what's happening? Do we need to have a sit down to discuss what's happening? Is it internal sabotage? Is it external sabotage? I think we have to have a sit down to find out what's really happening across these nations, because it's going to affect trade, it's going to affect a lot of things as far as movement of Africans across these countries to work and do other things. As you said, the diaspora is there, but let's be honest, right now, as far as trying to build the African continent, these things matter as far as travel for the Africans here and working and trade and policy, everything else. Ghana's in good condition, but we're trying to also stabilize our region. And if we're surrounded by countries which are falling wayside to coups, that doesn't bode well for us and our border security. So it's something to look at.
Do you want to learn any Ghanaian language online? Do you want to know more about your culture as a Ghanaian? Then we've got you covered at Ghana Lingo. We teach Fanti, Tree, Ga, Dangme, Over, Dagmani, Ahanta, Gunja, and many more. What we teach: grammar and sentence structure, pronunciation and intonation, speaking and conversation skills, reading and writing, as well as cultural studies. Who we teach: children, beginners and advanced learners, individuals and groups, and anyone passionate about Ghanaian languages. Our prices are cool and moderate. Contact us today.
Today, we're going to be talking about the MOWAA, the Museum of West African Art. Apparently there was a opening night or grand opening night that got kind of interrupted by protesters. And the Museum of West African Art, from my understanding, when I first saw at least announcements about it months and months ago, it came at the same time of the conversation about the British Museum now giving back artifacts that they stole. And one of the issues is that they were only loaning it back to these African countries, and particularly very specific African delegates or, West African delegates that they're only working with. And so, yeah, there was a protest, and it looks like the grand opening and the plans for that grand opening have kind of been ended, at least for right now. So I'm going to play a couple videos, or I'll play just one really quick so that we get an idea of what has been going on with the Museum of West African Art.
Au revoir. It saddened us. What we were hoping was that this would be a day to celebrate with a few of the guests who had come into Nigeria.
Osaro Iyamu is one of the protest leaders.
We consider the opening of the commission of MOWAA as illegal, as an insult on our revered throne.
So what are the issues? First of all, there is a dispute over land. The project was backed by the previous government here in Edo State, but the current government said the land allocated to MOWAA was actually meant for a public hospital. Secondly, there is conflict over the name of the museum. Protesters want the museum's name to honor the Oba of Benin, the city's traditional ruler. He is the descendant of the king from whom the Benin bronzes were stolen by British colonial soldiers over a century ago. And he says the original plan was for a royal museum that would house the Benin bronzes and not MOWAA.
There's not one single institutional investor.
Okay. What are your thoughts?
There's a lot of moving parts to this, a lot of different things. If you take one aspect of it, it's the local politics for one. Nigeria is a federal country, which means that there's no central government. It's basically like the United States. There are different states who have their own governance, own local ministers, local governors, and everything else. So the fact that, and it's funny, I was watching reading a different story about the fact that the government didn't even know that this museum was even being put there, even though there was some documentation say that, well, he signed off on it and the police knew about it and everything else. So there's this internal politics of like, okay, the local government is not talking to the local people, as far as what the land is supposed to be used for and why the museum was there in the first place. So there's a little bit of confusion about who is telling the truth, who's lying. And, sometimes with local politics, there's also kind of, you're supposed to give me something for this, which means it's either land compensation or something else as far as, giving me props or my due respect. So I think that wasn't done. And when these people established the museum, of course, money was paid, external partners from Europe and everything also came in play. And I think the local people were left out. So I think there's some sort of conflict there.
They look like the Benin bronzes, but they are not the originals. They are clay replicas created by British-Nigerian artist Yinka Shonibare as part of the Nigeria Imaginary exhibition.
And that's why the museum opened didn't go as well, because if everybody is supposed to be informed, why did they protest the whole land thing? Why did they protest and say that they didn't get involved in the conversations about giving the name of the Benin guy to the museum? Why is it a museum? Why is it not a palace? So there's a little bit of, internal politics.
The Benin bronzes are some of Africa's most famous artworks. There are thousands of brass, ivory, and wooden sculptures once made for the royal court of the Benin Kingdom in southern Nigeria. In 1897, British troops looted them during a violent expedition and shipped them to Europe. Today, they sit in museums across the world, from London to Berlin to New York. These replicas are part of Nigeria Imaginary, the first exhibition opening the Museum of West African Art.
What is going on there, from what I've read. But yeah, there's a lot of things happening, especially with the bronze statues and everything. There's the whole national debate about this was taken from us, taken to Europe and Americas and everything. Now you're trying to give it back, and now you're trying to loan it back. And I remember I was listening to a podcast that said that those curators in the European section, they don't think that if they was given back, these artifacts would be taken care of properly, which I find ironic because it was stolen in the first place. So why would they not want to take care of their own possessions that you stole? It's their possession. So why do you have a say in this? So there's a lot of debate, a lot of controversy on that point. But at the end of the day, I think there's still internal politics that needs to be taken care of. So we will see what happens going forward. Nigeria, unfortunately, has a lot of issues when it comes to local corruption and local governance. So we'll just wait and see what the news reports and investigative journalists say.
Art, known as MOWAA, to the public. This $25 million museum in Benin City is funded by both Nigerian and European partners. It sits on 6 hectares, an equivalent of 8 standard football pitches.
From the beginning, we have said we will be about the modern and contemporary.
Yeah, I mean, it does raise a lot of questions for sure, because the concept of, the British saying that Nigeria didn't have a adequate enough institution that they trusted that the artifacts can be in safely and be protected. I mean, it's crazy that people will even allow that to even be said and then do it. Like, it's kind of like it's one thing for them to say it, but then it's another thing for them to then go ahead and build the MOWAA and all of these types of things. And it's not to, like, we know how long it usually takes for things to be built, at least in Ghana, right? And so to see something like a museum get built, and I believe what one of the curators said, or the director of the museum said, the plans for this museum started only 3 years ago. So the fact that the museum is already standing, I mean, respectfully, it does become a local conversation, because if we're talking about a public hospital was supposed to be here, and then when you bring in a museum, that is a reasonable argument, especially because just what the museum industry complex even represents all over the world, right? The museum, as much as it's a place that holds all of this history, for the most part, it is a place that houses colonial efforts, because no one asks how they got them artifacts. You know what I mean? And it's even one thing when we say stolen artifacts, but it's like people passed away.
Yeah,
they
were literally killed. It was looting and killing, and they took artifacts by force.
Like, it was violence. It wasn't just like it was violence. It was years. It was people turning their backs on each other. It was also colonial people, you know what I mean? Like, it's not just like only the Africans were dying.
MOWAA was built with the hope that one day it would house the returning Benin bronzes. For now, it isn't yet the final home. Nigerian art leaders tell us the replicas on display here will serve as reminder of what was taken from the Benin Kingdom.
We are not the owners, nor do we have any legal title to Benin bronzes.
In 2023, Nigeria's National Commission for Museums and Monuments named the Oba of Benin as the rightful custodian. But the museum has become a controversial subject among stakeholders. Its grand opening has been stalled as the dispute over it continues to rage. It remains to be seen if this museum will have its day in the sun.
So it is like, it just obviously reminds me of the movie Black Panther, you know, and then even just with the Louvre recently having a break-in and some people stole necklaces and things like that. And the conversation still becomes like, well, it was already stolen. Like, right, you know, these diamond necklaces that they have in the Louvre Museum and the British Museum, I mean, all of the diamonds in there were technically stolen, and you know, they got that stuff during the time of slavery. And it's so interesting because when people talk about like the Benin bronzes or the artifacts and stuff like that, very rarely is the word slavery brought into the conversation.
Yep.
That's one of my personal, like, as a product of that, there comes a point where I start to kind of feel like, are these artifacts more important than the people?
Yeah.
Because there is a part of it where it was like, well, if we're talking about the things that were stolen, I mean, human lives, I would think, would mean a little bit more than that, right? But I also understand there's a spiritual essence to these bronzes and these artifacts and things like that, you know. But again, you know, it's really unfortunate because the conversation that at least I'm seeing online is very who should be paid homage to. And it's like, because then I start to question, like, well, respectfully, like, well, what role did that particular person have at the time of slavery then? Like, respectfully, like, because that's where that's where that debate comes in, because it's like, I see how hard you're fighting for these artifacts, but like, are you fighting like that for like everything that was stolen? Your resources that are being stolen on a daily basis, like, and are you asking for those mines to be named by the king of the area as well, or is it just you know, the artifacts? So I kind of have like I get it. I just also it does kind of feel like it is a colonial partnership more than it is a reparations. This doesn't feel like reparations. And I've seen that in a lot of the media articles, the word reparations being attached to the stolen artifacts, and then the word slavery not being mentioned at all. And it's like, I don't even know how you can mention reparations without acknowledging that this was all happening during the time of slavery, right? So this isn't just an issue of having these artifacts back, but I even seen a lot of backlash from the protesters and people who were against it. And they were saying things like, they also fear that the history of Benin and the history of the kingdoms could possibly also be misinterpreted. You know, there's also the fear that the curators are not going to tell the honest story. And I can tell, and again, like, it's like, and the word slavery just never gets brought up.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, and then that's why I'm saying there's a disconnect between like what the government does and what the local people. So the question now is, when this museum was even being thought of, were there any discussions locally with the people there? And did they have a discussion about all this? And it seems to like they didn't, because if you come to Ghana right now, if you come and you want to get maybe land or something, and it's owned by the chiefs or something, you have to pay homage to the chiefs and actually have a discussion about if you can actually get ownership to the land. You know, so the question now in Benin, in Nigeria, is, were there any discussions about the land where they say there was a hospital supposed to be or some palace supposed to be built? And apparently it was just bypassed. It's like, no, we're just going to build a museum here just to house these statues that were stolen by, the colonizers in the early times. So there's a definite conflict there. And again, who's having these discussions? It seems the governor seems to be feigning ignorance about the situation. The curators don't seem to really care about, resolution. They're like, we built this museum with external partners from Europe or whatever, and we pay millions of dollars, and we built this to house it. And the local people are saying, well, nobody told us. So now there's, of course, I think there needs to be a seat at the table, have everybody come in, just try to resolve it once and for all. But again, it seems there's a lot of egos in the room and a lot of people having discussions and not really talking to each other, just talking past each other. So how it gets resolved, nobody knows. The building's still there. What happens in the future, we don't know, unfortunately. But I hope it gets resolved and that the people there do get some sort of acknowledgement about what this museum is for. Do they get compensated because maybe they did steal from their land? Do they get any compensation as far as recognition or attributes or anything? We don't know. So we have to wait out and see what happens going forward into next year. Hopefully it gets resolved because this is a very important issue as far as, having Africans get their artifacts back from what was taken from them.